Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching the Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but first a quick word from my sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
Hi everybody, welcome to another roundup of the games I played in the last month. This is essentially where I get to give my initial thoughts on some games and possibly even some quick reviews of stuff that I've played in the previous month. A little late with this one, I've had a lot going on the last couple of weeks, it must be said. Hence the reset week next week, but I wanted to get this out before I went on my little holiday up to the Lake District. Because obviously you guys want to know what I want to play. So I got quite a few games to talk about, and I think we'll start with a couple where I could actually give you a quick review. First up, let's talk about Lost Code. This is a Kickstarter that I backed purely because the guys in the Dice Tower were talking very highly about a game called Think Straight, I think it was. It had god-awful components, but they said it was a really, really good deduction game. This is basically Mojito Studios' reprint of that, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to just take their word for it. I love deduction games, I'll jump in on it. It's essentially a sort of a mathy deduction game where each person will have a hidden screen and they'll have a sort of log tree in front of them, and basically what they've got is that they've got these little tiles with numbers on them that they stick on their log itself, and they're coloured based on the type of symbol and they're numbered 1 to 8. And the idea is that you're trying to figure out what code is in front of you, like what number is what in front of you, like the red is a 3, the yellow is a 5. But the way you do it is that you have a number pad to take some notes, 3 dice are rolled, and what you do is that when you roll the dice, let's say a red and a blue and a yellow comes up, you have to basically try and think, okay, so what do the red, blue and yellow numbers in front of me, bear in mind they're facing away from you and you can see everybody else's, what do they add up to? Well, obviously in the first turn you don't have much information, but the idea is that you will pick one of these many dials, and these dials have got different number ranges. So this one has got a range of 4, range of 3, range of 2, range of 1, range of 7, range of 8, they vary depending on how many points there were. You will basically take the dial and think, well, okay, I'm going to say that my numbers add up to somewhere between 12 to 15, okay? You'll check it with everybody else. They will look at your numbers and tell you if you're correct or too low or too high. You'll note it down on your pad, and then in a subsequent round, 3 dice will get rolled again, and you'll ask the same thing. But the idea is that if you get it wrong, you have to give up one of your tiles, so one of your numbers is now no longer in play, and you have to replace it with another one. This gives everybody else a bit more information as well as yourself. But if you get it right, you score the number of points of the dial. So if you go for a really high range, you're only going to get 2 points for it. But if you go for something that's a lot more narrow, you could score anywhere up to 6 points for it. And it's basically a case that as well as scoring points for doing some correct deductions in each round, you're trying to work out based on the whole higher and lower and did I get it exact thing, which numbers you've got in front of you. It's a little hard to explain. It's better to be taught it than it is to be explained it, but man, this is a good, fun deduction game, and it is harder than it sounds. I mean, really, it's one of those games where you think, oh yeah, I've got it, totally got it. I've figured out all my numbers, it's all fine, la-di-da. And then you get to the end where you have to sort of in 3 guesses, depending on how many points you want, think of which number you've got, and it's like, oh, hang on, I messed up here. No, everything's falling apart. And it really makes you think. You cannot autopilot through this game. You've got to have your thinking cap on, but the rules themselves are very straightforward. And I like the fact that you score points during the game as well as at the end for getting the actual numbers. So yeah, you might get your entire code right. But if you didn't score much during the game and somebody did, they might have enough of a lead on you to be, you know what, I can still keep ahead of you no matter the fact that you figured out your code easier. it's just a really cool, clever little game. What was it done? From Leo Colavini. So, it's a well-known designer doing this. Think Straight, yep, it had horrible components, so I probably wouldn't want that in my collection, but this one is so far here to stay. I really enjoy it. I would give it at least an 8, if not possibly a 9 out of 10. I really enjoy this deduction game. You can play it with up to 4 players, and honestly, you're probably better off playing it with a good 3 or 4 players, because you're going to have 4 different logs with numbers on anyway. You're going to have dummy players, so you might as well have other people to, join in the thinking deduction with you. No solo mode, unfortunately. You'll just have to deal with that. I'm pretty certain there's no solo mode in here. If there is, I'm not even going to bother looking, because frankly, yeah, there's no solo mode in here. Yep, 2 to 4 players, you got to deal with it. But honestly, you may not have got it on Kickstarter, but if they do bring this to retail, which I hope they do, if you see it at Essen, I highly recommend this one if you're a deduction game fan. It really is good fun.
Oh, it sounds dreamy.
Next one I want to talk about is Bamboo. People have asked me to review this one properly, and I don't know if I'll be able to get time to do a proper review of it, so I figured I'd talk about it now. This one is essentially what I could call baby Bitoku. It's hard to say. This one isn't so much a point salad as Bitoku is, but when you look at it, it's got that kind of Japanesey, cartoony, almost Studio Ghibli-esque vibe. So it's definitely got the whole artwork on it. And of course, it's done by Devir Games, so it's got the same pedigree behind it, but of course, comes in a much smaller box. It might even be the same designer that did Bitoku as well, but I'll have to double check that and put it on the screen if it's wrong. But essentially, Bamboo is very tightly packed in the box. I mean, you just about fit everything in here, but man, they do make the best use of the space.
We just make boxes here.
So in this game, you've got a little family that you're bringing up. This is your player board, which is effectively a little house. You're filling it with trinkets and souvenirs and furniture to make your house more homely. It's got a very zen-like feel to it.
Look at me! I'm Dr. Zoidberg, homeowner!
But you're also getting food in order to feed your family well at the end of a round. And there are little objective tiles that you can go for in order to score points based on what you put inside your house. At the end of a round, though, you also can befriend spirits, effectively, just nice Japanesey spirits, and each one of these has an ability that you can tap to exhaust each round, but you got to pay money in order to actually sort of bring them back up again so they don't automatically refresh. But that all sounds kind of generic, or you've seen it before, and for the most part it is kind of what you've seen before. It's a very simple to get into game. But there's a little twist. Everybody has got these little incense sticks. It's, these little bamboo stalks, sorry. And the idea is that these bamboo stalks are in the different colours here, like green, blue, purple and red. And they'll be set on this board here. And what you do is that you basically look on your player board to which bamboo sticks you've got stored, and using these bamboo sticks you do a certain amount of actions each round. But what you do is you select one colour and activate all of them if you can. You have incense sticks that you place on these little temples here in order to summon the spirits, but you can only do 1 action per incense stick, and you only have so many of them each round. But the idea is that if I take 2 bamboo sticks of red, I get to do a max of 2 actions. If I do all 4 bamboo sticks, then I could do up to 4 actions. But you have to take the whole lot off, you don't get a choice. And so these bamboo sticks have the icons for the various actions on them. And after you've done the various actions, you then have to basically push the bamboo stalks up these particular paths, and you essentially push some off that go onto your board and you use in future turns. So you're kind of future planning your turns ahead, but you're also trying to be efficient with your actions and of course beat other players to the punch, because this game is very tight, particularly with 4 players, when you've got to alright, I need this specific tile, I need this specific objective, I need to get the food in order to feed my family, you've nicked the best food, there's definitely a lot of that. Not to mention the spirits go to whoever has the most incense sticks in that temple, and of course everybody's dumping incense sticks into it, so there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of turn angst tension with the spots. I suppose it's worker placement or action selection, it's one of the two. But it's just a very nice, well put together game. Very nice, cool little bamboo stalk pieces here. Very pretty artwork. I mean, this is kind of what I wanted something like Bitoku to be, just a nice, cool, zen, light, I wouldn't say light, it's kind of mid-weight to light, but it's a nice, pleasant game despite all the turn angst. The one problem I do see with this game, though, as much as I can recommend it as a cool game, is the replay value. There's not a huge amount of variety in this game. You know, you have the various objective tiles, but you know, you can take or leave those each game. But the souvenirs that you grab for your house are just basically sets, so you know, there's nothing particularly different there. You'll see every spirit pretty much in each game you play. There's only so many different types, so that's not going to be too varied. And the game plays out pretty much the same each time. You get your bamboo stalks, you've got your incense sticks, you have more actions to do in later rounds than you do in the earlier rounds, and you go through it. I mean, the main thing that's kind of different and twisty is the fact that when you put the tiles in your house, you're trying to balance your chi or zen or whatever it is in this sort of setting. But basically, the point values on the tiles you put in here need to equal on the left and the right side, otherwise you lose points at the end. You know, so you got to be careful not only what you're doing for the objective tiles, but also thinking about the end game. The game itself, Bamboo, is a nice game. You've got an advanced side on the back where you've got to be even more careful about what stuff you place or don't place. And I like this whole bamboo stalk mechanism, but that replay value is a problem. And it's not the shortest game ever, particularly with 4 players. I mean, what does the box claim? You know, it's always about what it claims. 90 minutes, 2 to 4 players. Now, 90 minutes is probably accurate with it, certainly with 2 to 3 players. 4 players could set you a bit longer than that. It could creep up to 2 hours if you've got slow players. But, you know, with familiarity, you should be able to get it down to 90 minutes. So it's not too long a game. I'd certainly rather play this than Batoku any day. But how many times am I going to play it before I get bored of the replay value issue? That remains to be seen, because, you know, as I say, it plays out the same every time. No game feels that different to another game, and that is a little bit of a concern.
It's not your fault.
Next up on the list, Turing Machine. Yes, we're continuing down this whole deduction game front, and I've been meaning to play this game for a long time, and a friend of mine taught me both the co-op and competitive version of it. Certainly after playing this game, I gotta admit, it's definitely a solo game pretty much. I mean, this one, the co-op version is whatever, it's basically a solo mode, and then the whole competitive side is just basically race to figure it out, which I know a lot of deduction games are, so I can't fault it too much on that, but honestly, yeah, you might as well just play it solo. But it's a cool logic game where you're trying to find out what the 3-digit code is at the end of the game, but what you do is that you basically have these variables or varieties or whatever they call them. It's a weird name, but basically there's these 5 like logic rules, like blue is greater than yellow, or yellow is odd, or you know, blue and yellow add up to 6, or blue and yellow add up to 8, that kind of thing. And the idea is that you pick whatever 3 numbers you want, you put them together, these little square sheets, and you use one of the sort of tab things that what they call the logic rule is by. Put it on there, and what it does is that it reveals a tiny little sort of tick and cross as to, you know, does the code that you've put into this rule work or not. It's a really clever little system, you know, pretty intuitive. But the idea is that based on the answers that you get each time, you can basically start to piece together what your code must be, and it's a case of doing it as quick as possible. In competitive, you're just trying to do it quicker than the other players. In a solo, I think you're trying to, you know, figure it out preferably before, like, there's no real AI, but you're kind of trying to see, right, well, how many moves can I do it in compared to how many moves the scenario wants me to do it? And I think there's an app that allows you to get more scenarios online. So it's a pretty straightforward game in itself, but what I found it was quite easy. I found it really easy to figure out the code in both the games we played, and I think that might be because we were using quite early logic rules. There's quite a big stack of them, and we were using probably only stuff in the... Well, they go through a fair sequential uprising, but I think we were using fairly simple logic rules, and it meant that it wasn't too difficult to figure out the code. I don't think I'm an expert at this game after 2 plays, certainly. And I think that I would probably like it more if I tried out some of those harder ones, the ones that are a bit more mathy and a bit more weird. But this game was interesting. You know, would it be one I'd want to buy and keep in my collection? I don't know. But I enjoyed my time with it and I would play it. Although, again, I don't know why I would want to play it with multiplayer. I think this might be just something that if I see it on a second-hand sale nice and cheap, I might buy it just for my own enjoyment. But I do have a bunch of other deduction games that I can play solo, like Search for Planet X, for example, and I suppose not Awkward Guess. Awkward Guess works better multiplayer. Well, maybe I will grab this for solo sometime, but, you know, I've got Search for Planet X, so that's not too bad. But, yeah, finally got this one off my hit list, and suffice to say, you know, first impression, 6 or 7, I did like it. I'd like to try it some more, but maybe with some more complicated logic rules in it.
Dear God, what is it like in your funny little brains? It must be so boring.
Speaking of the search for Planet X, actually, why don't I move on to the search for lost species? Yes, this one I did not back on Kickstarter, and you're probably wondering why. Well, I love Search for Planet X. I think it's an excellent deduction game. When I heard about Search for Lost Species, I was like, oh cool, another one like that. Oh, it's very like that. Oh, it's practically the same, but with a spatial awareness aspect and a couple of other tweaks. Do I really need to spend £50-60 on this game? I'm not sure I do, and so I backed out of the Kickstarter because I figured I don't want to own both. Well, it's recently fulfilled to most Kickstarter backers as far as I'm aware, certainly in the UK they have, and somebody brought it to the club night, and so I got a chance to finally try it. Next time we're doing it with faster people though, man, it took forever to get through that game. You know, we had some slow people in that one, but that aside, the game is good fun. But it is basically the search for Planet X with maybe some extra steps with the spatial awareness. You are basically trying to find out where on this map, you know, this particular species is. And there's a bunch of logic rules where you're finding out the other animals on the island, and based on where those animals are, they've all got their own logic rules as to where they can and can't go. You eventually narrow down where that lost species is. The main twist is that in Planet X you were basically like, you were restricted on where you could look in the sky based on the whole telescope thing. Here you have to move around the island to get to spots in order to like survey them. So you can survey along the coast, you can set a camera trap for one particular spot, you can go to a town and basically get some, you know, bit like one of those research clues that you got in Search for Planet X. This one basically allows you to get a similar thing, but you can also grab these like special ability cards which either give you a one-off ability or they could give you some in-game scoring opportunity. Like maybe you've managed to find out where all the marmosets are or something, in which case you'll get 2 points for each of those. It just adds another way to score points in the game, and it's pretty sweet, even if maybe I thought some of them were a little bit easier than others. But the game itself still has that cool deduction element. Right, I found out that the parrots are in these locations. Well, hang on, the parrots have got to be in this formation. Well, if that's a marmoset, then I don't know what the animals are, but if that's a marmoset, there's no way that the bird can be there. So the birds must be there. So the birds must be there. So an empty space could be there, but the toad could be in that space. And it's this kind of thinking that you're doing throughout the game. But aside from those like special scoring cards and the fact that it's spatial on the map, that's kind of the main differences. The rest of it basically feels exactly like Search for Planet X, which doesn't make this a bad game, but is it a necessary game? I wouldn't own both of these. I just don't see the point. I think you would pick your poison. It could be by theme, even though it's basically a deduction game, so what does it really matter whether you go for the animals or the space theme? It's a deduction game. I think it's just a case of, do you like those sort of endgame scoring cards and the abilities, which, you know, vary in terms of their power level, and there is the balance issue potentially, but also with the map spatial awareness thing, which is cool, but it's not that much harder to pilot than the looking in the sky thing. Or do you prefer the space one, which is probably a little bit more streamlined? You know, both are great games, so I could take or leave each one, frankly. But the fact that I own Search for Planet X means that I'm probably not going to go and buy Search for Lost Species, because I've got one. I'm perfectly content with that. I don't need the other. So pick your poison, but at least grab one of them, because they are both sweet games. Very briefly, I'll mention Trails. Trails was a game that I played, I think, the last game? Was it the last game I played at the 24-hour marathon? Might have been. Either that or it was one of the second or third to last games. It was definitely one of those last few games that I remember playing when I was flagging like crazy and really tired and I needed something simple to play, but I was running out of potential games to join because there's only so much people at that point. But two people very nicely invited me to their two-player, you know, made it a three-player game of Trails. This is effectively the pseudo-sequel to Parks, but a smaller, supposedly simpler version of it. It's simpler, but there's still got a few rules in it that you've got to sort of learn. I mean, you've got, okay, fine, you move along this path and back again. Cool, so you just get the resources and trade them in for cards. Okay, great. Wait a minute, so you've got this camera thing where you flip cards and try to get the bird symbols. Okay, then you've got this bear token that moves across the board. So if you get to the end, you activate where the bear is, and then there's a sun marker. So when you get to the end, you activate the bonus from the sun. It's just like, I thought this was meant to be a simpler game. It felt like there was just like 2, 3, 4 of these little add-on rules on the end, and it's like, well, you're kind of making it just as fiddly as Parks, so I don't quite get where the whole need for Trails is. Looks gorgeous, beautiful artwork and beautiful components, but basically you kind of just do the same thing, just not with the Splendor cards, basically. You know, you go from one end of the road to the other, and you can't go, you know, you can go as fast as you like, or you go a little bit slower, person at the back is whose turn it is, and then you get the resources, you trade them in for the point cards, and then there's a few other things you do. But it's pretty relaxing, it's pretty zen-like, but again, I didn't get into Parks that much, and I just don't, I get why people like it, but for me it's just never grabbed me. You know, Parks feels like Splendor with extra steps. You are trading in these generic color resources to get cards that all have Splendor style requirements on them. You know, except you have to go back and forth along this path in order to get said resources, whereas in Splendor, you just take them from piles. So I'd rather play Splendor, as much as Parks, I would argue probably does look better. You know, Splendor's not a bad looking game, but Parks is beautiful, I'll give it that. This Trails just feels unnecessary though. It doesn't feel much simpler than Parks, although it is shorter than Parks by a considerable margin. And maybe that's the key thing. It's not necessarily got a lot simpler rules, but it's definitely shorter by far. So maybe I would play Trails rather than Parks, because I think when you go 3 to 5 players in Parks, it just drags on for too long. But yeah, I mean, the game is fine. I've never really got into these as much as other people. I don't know what it is. There's just something about these games that doesn't draw me in. As much as they aesthetically look beautiful, I don't find myself excited to play these games, particularly when there's a lot of players, because it just feels like it goes on for too long. I don't know, maybe everybody likes Trails, although I'm curious to know your thoughts, whether you prefer Parks to Trails, and if so, why?
It varies from moment to moment.
Next up, I've played a PAX game. Yeah, I've played a couple of PAX games before. I've played PAX Premier and I've played PAX Renaissance. I prefer Renaissance to Premier, but Premier is fine too. But this time I got to play a fairly oldish PAX game called Pax Porfiriana. How do you read that actually? As a Porfiriana, I think that's it. It's like set in the kind of Mexican region. And this is basically pretty much a card game. You've got a display of cards and they tick down. But the idea is that you're trying to win by one of 3 or 4 potential victory conditions. But what you do is that you grab these like different cards that get you income and these various personalities and stuff. It's all set around some revolution in early 20th century Mexico. I honestly couldn't care less about the historical theme of this game, but then I never really cared about the historical theme in any of the other PAX games because history's just not my interest. But the game itself, I wanted to see if the mechanics were any good. But it's basically a case that you pay in order to get these cards, put them in your tableau, trigger some cool combos, but you've got these like different sort of state of the city, you know, I forget what they're called, but basically types of democracy cards. And depending on what actions happen in the game, one will be in effect. And these other cards come through, which is like your chance to overthrow the person in charge. I really can't remember the history stuff behind this.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
Embarrassing, I know. But the idea is that with these cards, you build up these cards, they get you income, they do cool bonuses and give you other effects, and you can potentially go and hurt on other people's. But these cards will tick through the display, which you can activate, which is like your chance to win the game, overthrow the guy in charge. Again, I forget the names and terminology of this game. But the idea is that that's your chance to win. And there's 1 of 4 victory conditions, and the idea is depending what sort of state the government's in, that particular victory condition is the one that's going for. And so what you look is that you compare a target number, which is basically like the base game difficulty at that time, versus what everybody else has got. And the idea is that you need to have as many victory points as that target number, but also beat out the other players at it. And if you can do so, you win automatically. There's no end game scoring or anything, it's just straight up win. I think PAX Renaissance did something similar, yeah, where you sort of insta-win. I can't remember if PAX Premier was also a case of that. I mean, it's been a while since I played Premier, but I've played a few games of Renaissance. And so it's basically just, you know, using these cards to your best advantage and trying to find the best timing in order to trigger one of those events. I found this one interesting, honestly. From a mechanical standpoint, it was a cool, card system. I liked the fact that there was different ones to go for, even though there was a bit of rinse-repeat. There was certainly some tactics required. I mean, you can strategize and say, I'm going to go for a particular victory point condition, but then if you're not flexible, it could hurt you if it doesn't go your way. Sometimes you'll see other cards come out that you'll be like, that'd be a good one to get. Maybe I could try and grab that and then start going to this way. It's got some cool sort of back and forth between the players, even if there is potentially a lot of AP and downtime here because you've obviously got to think about your turn. But you don't get that many actions on your turn, so if you're familiar with the game, I can see this going quick. The main problem is, as you've already sort of sussed, I forget everything to do with the historical part of this game. I mean, this is, I don't want to say a niche part of history because me not being a historian expert, me saying niche is kind of misleading. But it's definitely an area of history that I know sod all about. And I would imagine a lot of people know sod all about. So if you want to learn about this period of history, then by all means, this game's going to teach you it in spades. But if you're someone like me who isn't that interested in history, you're getting taught all this terminology and all this stuff to do with it, and you see these cards with these particular people on it in these particular periods of war or something, and I'm like, I haven't got no clue what these are, what effect does it do? Which means the theme is kind of lost on me, even more than something like Pax Renaissance and Pax Premier, which the theme of those doesn't exactly like work for me either. You know, I don't recognize who these personalities are or anything. And here, it's even worse. But mechanically, I enjoyed this game and I would like to play it again. I'd like to give it a few more tries. Maybe, I suppose it didn't take too long actually. I thought it was reasonable, about 90 odd minutes to finish the game. I'd like to give this one another go and see how it is. I mean, I quite like the PAX games mechanically, and I thought I would hate them. I thought that, oh, this is not going to be games I enjoy, but for something, I think the interaction between the players and the fact that you do have to care what everyone else is doing in each of these PAX games elevates it to a type of game that I would enjoy, even though that there is a little bit of meanness to it. Everybody's getting a little bit of that meanness, so it's not like it's just directed at one person. But yeah, I do wish the themes worked a little bit better on me, but that's my fault, not the game. Totally my fault for being an ignoramus when it comes to history. These games will teach you this theme in spades, they will represent it well, you've just got to be interested in the subject matter to get the most out of it. Alright, two more and I'm going to try and speed this up because this video is going to go on for a while otherwise. Firstly, Project L. Project L was a game that was on my hit list for a while. I was like, oh, this should be interesting. I finally want to get to play this game. I like polyomino games. People were raving about this one. It was like, you must get Project L. It is amazing. Oh no, it's out of print because Boardcubator has gone under and stuff. Who will pick up Project L? I have now played it.
What the hell was that?
Yeah, was that it? That was it. That was your grand Project L, was it? You basically have a bunch of these tiles with like different spaces that you've got to fill in, a bit like what you have in like silver and gold with the cards. And you grab these Tetris pieces and you try to fill them up. But the idea is that every time you complete one of these tiles, it gives you a certain amount of points, but it also gives you like a bonus piece that you use. And the pieces that you used in the current one come back to you. So it's kind of like a polyomino engine builder. As you're doing these various different shapes and tiles and filling them up, you're getting more pieces which you can use to do the more powerful tiles, and you just carry on until they all run out and then you tot up the points. It's fine. I mean, it does the job, but I'd rather play Alice's Garden, which you can do in just about the same amount of time, if not slightly less. I'd rather play Barren Park, which is just a bit more interesting of a game. I mean, I found it fine. It's not a bad game, but I think what's hurt it for me is the fact that everybody kept going on about it. Everybody was like, ooh, Project L, Project L. It comes in a box that's way too big for a game that's this crazy simple. I mean, Alice's Garden comes in that nice small box and yet gives you a decent amount of stuff in it. This thing comes in like a full-size box, and it just doesn't feel necessary just to have these fairly basic looking Tetris shapes and a bunch of black tiles effectively, which is cool that they're all basically dual recess things so you can slot the Tetris pieces in it. You know, production quality is pretty sweet, but yeah, I mean, it's fine. 6 out of 10. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. It's above average, but I can't tell everybody to go out and grab this. It just does the job, but it didn't really grab me. It didn't feel like anything that I would desperately want to play if it was on the table. I feel like there are other polyomino games that do it better and or quicker. And like I say, I keep touting the praise of Alice's Garden. I still think that one beats it out. But yeah, I don't know. Was that it?
You cut me deep, Shrek. You cut me real deep just now.
Right, I think I need to wrap this video up because there are a couple of games I could talk about, but one of them I have talked about on my recent podcast, Path of Light and Shadows. You can get my full thoughts on that one. But I want to mention this one in particular. Now, I might have spoken about this before in a podcast episode, saying that I thought it was fine and I want to play it again. Well, I got to play it again. I got taught it at the 24-hour game marathon again. because I'd kind of forgotten the rules. And we sat down for a free player of Anno 1800. I think it's 1800 or some other day, but Anno, basically. Never played the computer game this is based on. But you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, this is a economic-y style Euro game with Martin Wallace's name on the box. And yes, if anybody knows my channel and my taste in games, as much as I think Martin Wallace is a bubbly, very friendly, lovely gentleman. He's friendly as all get out. I've had dinner with him before. He's incredibly nice. I just don't particularly like his games. They just aren't for me. I either find them boring or I find them frustratingly bad for me. They just don't gel with my taste in games. I don't like Study and Emerald, hate Brass, don't like the Disc and Morphoc or whatever the Discworld one was. I have no idea. Via Nebula was boring. Did he also do Age of Steam? I think he did. Yeah, hate that game.
We have found the witch, may we burn her?
And I've got no interest in playing Australia, even though some people have told me about it. I mean, not because I don't reckon I would like the game, although it does have trains in it. I just refuse to play any game that has a giant tarantula spider or whatever on the top corner of the board. I'm sorry, the most common fear in the world, and you put the big picture of it in the corner of your board? Are you trying to scare people away from playing your game? Come on, a bit more intelligence, please. I thought, fine, let's try Anno again, because the first time I played it, I remembered liking it, but I couldn't remember much about it. It's essentially a big kind of technology invention game in a sense. You've got these little cube workers of different colors and different levels, but you've got a board with all these spaces you can put these different manufacturing, like factories on, basically. And they manufacture all sorts of different goods. And when I say all sorts of different goods, I mean all sorts of bloody goods, because you have this board with a ton of these different things that you can make during a game. And the idea is that it involves a lot of planning ahead, because you have to basically go, right, let's see, I've got, I need to make cloth. Okay, well, what do I need? Well, I need a bit of that. Well, I need to get that first, right? And then, that makes that, which then makes that, which then makes that. Oh, God. It's a lot of that. So it is quite thinky in that respect, but the rules are straightforward. The player aid gives you a very good rundown of all the actions. I think you have, 1 out of 8 actions to choose from, but you resolve the one action and then you're done. So the turns can be relatively quick, but it's relatively streamlined in how that plays. But the idea is that you're utilizing the worker cubes that you've got in order to use the factories you've got to make new stuff which you'll put on your board. You need to expand your board in order to look overseas for some more exotics type goods like chocolate and tobacco and spices. But then you also probably want some ships, because those ships allow you to go explore other lands, but they also allow you to get more of these trade tokens which you can kind of use as almost a bit of a wild. Like, you can basically say, right, well, I can't make canned food, so, well, you can make canned food. I'll use a trade token and I'm going to use your canned food. They get a gold, which they can use to retract workers and basically do cool stuff, but you at least get to use their canned food to do whatever it is you need to do. So there's a decent amount of interaction in the game where you're not screwing other people over, other than the fact that you might take a tech that they want. But, other than that, it's positive interaction. You want to use, I have made the ability to make, I've found smelting, right, glass making, here we go. I can do glass making. Anybody want a bit of my glass making? Ah, you do. It's done something for you, it's made it better, but I get gold out of it. So you get a benefit, I get a benefit. It's not him screwing me over. And so that sort of stuff is great in a Euro game. This is not multiplayer solitaire at all. But that bit alone is already fun. I like the card system as well. You have these cards which, if you fulfill the objective, like you've made certain things in turn, you cash them in and they get you some cool bonus. But they're also an endgame timer. Every time you get new workers, you have to get more cards. But if you can use up all your cards, the game end happens. And so you're looking at other players and thinking to yourself, well, I need to get these cards out so I can end the game, because I think I'm in the lead. But then if I play these cards, I'm going to get more workers, more blue workers, which means I'm going to draw more cards, and I'm going to have to get those out. So do I use this card in order to discard these two, trash these two out of the game, and then, right, I should work to that then. Well, what do I need? Well, I need glass making. I also need to know how to make jelly. I don't know, so I forget what half the texts are, but fine, okay, well, how do I make jelly then? Can you make jelly? No. Can you make jelly? Oh, what do I need to make jelly then? Let's see, I need nails and corrugated iron. This is a weird jelly. But, and right, how do I get corrugated iron then? Well, I can use your your ore, and I've already got the ability to make nails. Great, that's good, so I can make this. And you're constantly doing that throughout the game. And I'm staggered to even think this.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
But I enjoy this game. I think it's a solid game. Not 9 out of 10 out of 10 territory, but I'd give this one an 8. I'd happily play this game again. I'm even contemplating owning it, although a friend of mine has it, so I don't know if I desperately need to own it. But I found this good fun. I don't know if you can play it solo. I'd be interested to know on that front, but I just found it enjoyable. And I cannot believe that I actually have found a Martin Wallace game that I enjoy. I mean, come on. If you've been getting on my case lately for being too negative about stuff, the fact that I've enjoyed a Martin Wallace game does not forgive any past transgression I've done. Never! The fact that I can find my one single Martin Wallace game that I can actually stick a seal of approval on and say, I like and recommend this game. That's a pretty big deal, folks, alright? You've got to give this one a try. I've never played the computer game, and chances are I probably won't. And yeah, I don't overly care about the theme in a sense, you know, all this sort of, you know, old age, industrial age stuff. It's not a theme I'm that desperate for, although it is fun joking with the players about what type of stuff you can make. You know, I think, in the last, well, it's inevitable. I made sausages, and I made, what did I make? I made sausages and something else, and I was saying, like, do you want... Yeah, I think I was able to make salt and sausages, or something and sausages, and I just get basically saying, would you like some of my salty sausage? Or something else sausage. I can't remember. But basically, we were children, and we were making stupid jokes.
Bottom.
And it is just quite cool to see what other players do. But, yeah, it's relatively streamlined. It's thinky. You know, you can't autopilot this game. So, good Eurowiness. Doesn't take too long. 90 minutes to 2 hours max should be how long it takes you, which is a pretty good length for this. And some positive player interaction. It does what I want to happen in a Euro game. So, yeah. End on that note, why don't you? Yeah, wrap the video up there on a positive note. The first Martin Wallace game that I can actually give a seal of approval to and say, I want to play this some more. Anno 1800 or whatever. So, yeah. Solid one. So yeah, that's all my games for July that I'm going to talk about. There's a couple more, but my throat is going and I do need to get this edited so I can get it prepared before I go away for the lakes. But if you've enjoyed this show, then by all means, thumb it up on YouTube and let me know your comments down below about all the games I've mentioned. Do you like them? Do you love them? Tell me your thoughts. I'd love to read them. And of course, check out all the other content on the channel, especially during the week that I'm away. I'm going to try and schedule some stuff for you folks so you're not totally devoid of content while I'm gone. But yeah, I think that reset break is necessary for many, many reasons, both blogging, work, and just home related. I kind of just need that break with the family. So, you know, it's one of those times where, not necessarily burnout, but there's just a lot of stuff that's been happening, and I think that a reset is exactly the medicine I need. So until next time, remember, regardless if you've just had a heart attack from me liking the Martin Wallace game, it's still only a game. So hopefully you'll get better. Take care, and bye for now.